All right, so now we're going to apply this a little bit. So example 6 says B is a midpoint of AC. So let's go ahead and draw our picture real quick, guys. Point, point, B in the middle. Let's go straight across, label it ABC. Okay, so let's just talk real quick about what that means. If B is a midpoint of AC, what does that mean? Well, it means that AB is congruent to BC, which means that they have the same lengths, right? So let's go ahead and label what we got. So we have AB is 3x plus 6, okay? And then BC is a little bit hard to see, but it's 2x plus 14. So how am I going to find x? Because it says find x and the length of AC. Well, I'm going to find x by knowing my vocabulary, right? So once again, B being the midpoint is going to split up the segment AC into two congruent segments, which means that AB is congruent to BC. And if I know that they have congruent lengths, all right, if I know that they're congruent, what does that mean about their lengths? It means that their lengths are equal. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set those two expressions equal to one another and solve for x. So I'm going to have 3x plus 6 equals, all right, 2x plus 14. I'm going to solve, so I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. I'm going to get x plus 6 is equal to 14. Subtract out that 6, I'm going to get x is equal to 8. So that's my first half. Now what the next question is saying is find AC. Now there's multiple ways of doing this, okay? I'm going to take 8 and plug it in to both of these x's and then add them together. That's one way of doing it, okay? So I'm going to take 8, plug it into my x. So I'm going to have 3 times 8 plus 6, okay, plus 2 times 8 plus 14. And then that together is going to equal the full length of AC using the segment addition postulate. So I'm going to get 24 plus 6 plus 16 plus 14 gives me a full length of 60. Okay, let's just talk another way of doing it. You could have just plugged it into one of those segments. So I could have just plugged it into AB, all right, which would have given me 30. And because I know that the lengths are equal, this also means that this also has to be 30. So I could have just doubled it to get 60, but either way, I'm going to get the same answer, okay? So the length of AC is equal to 60. Okay, let's try the next one. So it's similar, but a little bit different. So I think we've done questions like this before. So it says Q is the midpoint of segment PR. So let's go ahead and draw that. Point, 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 all right? And it goes P, Q, R, because this is Q is the midpoint of PR. So I'm going to go ahead and mark PQ has to be congruent to QR because of the midpoint theorem, right? So let's label what we have. So I have PQ is 2x minus 10, and then the full length of PR, so that full thing, is 3x plus 7. So let's just real quick realize that if you look at these lengths, all right, I have PQ is this, and then I have PR is this full segment. We cannot just set those equal to one another because obviously this longer segment isn't going to be equal to that smaller one, right? Because that smaller one is actually part of the full one. So what does it mean for these two segments, PQ and QR, to be congruent? It means that they have to have equal lengths. So if 2x minus 10 is PQ, it is also QR. So I'm going to go ahead and label that also 2x minus 10. And now I can do segment addition where I'm going to add PQ plus QR and set it equal to the full length of PR. Okay, so everything is coming back around in a circle. So I'm going to get 2x minus 10 plus 2x minus 10 equals, all right, 3x plus 7. I'm going to get 4x minus 20 when I combine like terms is equal to 3x plus 7. And then solving, I'm going to subtract the 3x over, so I'm going to get x minus 20 is equal to 7. Add the 20 over, x is equal to 27. And that right there is my final answer, okay? Now, it says to find the length of QR, but for time purposes, we're not, because you could just take that 27 and plug it into that QR right there, all right? Time purposes, we're just going to move along, okay? So our last term here is segment bisector. So this definition is really, really important, especially when we get to proofs in our next chapter, okay? So it's important that you know this verbatim, which means word for word, all right? You need to be able to apply this. So I'm going to be super dramatic about this, okay? So a segment bisector is a line, ray, or segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint, okay? So let's draw a picture of it. So let's draw a segment. Let's call this MN. And then let's have a line actually bisect this segment, okay? So I'm going to draw a line that seems to cut it right in half. And I'm going to call that line J, okay? And let's go ahead and put that intersection point as P. So if I'm told that line J bisects segment MN, right? What that means is that it bisects it at its midpoint. So what does that mean? That means then that this intersection point right here has to be the midpoint. All right, that is my first conclusion from this picture, is that P is the midpoint. Okay? So let's apply that now. All right, so example 8 says, given information, segment AC bisects segment BD. All right, so segment AC is bisecting BD. So the question is which segment is being bisected? AC is doing the bisecting of BD. So that means BD is the bisector, or BD is being bisected, okay? So if we go back to that definition, a line, ray, or segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint, we're going to draw 3 conclusions, all right? But they have to go in order, okay? So if I know AC bisects BD and I know a bisector intersects at the midpoint, my first conclusion has to be that point E is the midpoint. So E is the midpoint. And I want to be more specific of BD. So my first conclusion is based off of that definition, all right? That's why I tell you guys to know your vocab, all right? That E is the midpoint of BD. Now, if I know that E is the midpoint of BD, what does that mean? Well, using the midpoint theorem, I can state now that ED is congruent to EB. Now we're going to go based off of our definition of congruent. What does it mean if the segments are congruent? Well, it means that their lengths are the same, right? So to say that their lengths are the same, we're going to say that the length of ED is equal to the length of EB. And those are 3 conclusions that have to go in that order. We have to first state it's a midpoint, then we can state that they're congruent, and then we can state that their lengths are equal, okay? All right, last question in here, guys. Let's go ahead and draw a picture. So I want you to start with segment EF. Okay, and AB is bisecting it at point F, or X, okay? So that means we're gonna draw this segment AB coming through there. Okay, so there's our picture. So it says that EF bisects segment AB, all right, at point X. And I'm just going to switch my picture just a little bit so it's a little bit more accurate. Okay, so which segment is doing the bisecting? Well, EF is bisecting AB at point X, all right, which means that AB is the one that's being bisected. Okay, so what's the significance of point X? Well, using that definition of a segment bisector, it's a line, ray, or segment that intersects a segment at its midpoint. So the significance of point X has to be that X is the midpoint of AB. Okay, and so if we know that X is the midpoint of AB, what do we know about XA and XB? We know that they are congruent. And if we know that they are congruent, then we know that their lengths are equal, which means to find X, okay, we are going to set these two equal to one another. So I'm going to have 4X plus 10 equal to 2x plus 24. And now we solve. So I'm going to subtract the 2x over. So I'm going to get 2x plus 10 is equal to 24. I'm going to subtract that 10 over. So I'm going to have 2x is equal to 14, which means that x is equal to 7. And once again, let's go ahead and keep going. So it says to find the length of AX, which means all I'm going to do is plug that 7 into that expression. So I'm going to have 4 times 7 plus 10, which gives me 28 plus 10, which gives me a length of 38. Whew, that was long, guys. All right, thanks for sticking with me. Lots of content. Let me know if you